This is the conversation with Priti Malik. She is a co-host of the award-winning The Kris Fade Show and resident gossip queen at 104.4 Virgin Radio Dubai. Apart from being one of the most loved radio presenters in Dubai, she's also a wonderful dancer. In this conversation, we discuss our mutual love for Backstreet Boys, growing up in New York City, the contrast with Dubai, radio, The Kris Fade Show, and dance. A small message: my country, India, is currently going through one of the worst COVID surges to date. I have family that's been affected by it, and just due to the sheer numbers, almost everyone I know has a first or second degree connection that's been seriously affected by COVID. If you can help in any way, whether through leads, donations, support, or any other form, please do so. If I can help in any way, whether personally or through this platform, please do reach out to me. In the meantime, I hope these conversations about love, creativity, inspirations, or just the beauty of life can help people, if even for an hour, get their mind off the constant tension, anxiety, pain, and suffering. For all of you who are suffering and have lost someone close to them in this spike, I would like to dedicate this poem to you. All you who sleep tonight, far from the ones you love, no hands to left or right, and emptiness above. Know that you aren't alone. The whole world shares your tears, some for 2 nights or one, and some for all the years. This is no time. If you like what you see, then do hit subscribe on YouTube, follow on Spotify, or rate 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. This project takes a lot of my time, money, and effort, so if you like to see it continue, do consider making a small donation on Patreon. And thank you to the people who continue to do so. For other forms of love and support, you can follow this channel on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, or Reddit, or follow me personally. And now, it's no time. So for your episode, I would like to start out with a very small challenge. And the challenge is that I'm going to read out a verse from...
Oh, already?
Yeah, that's how we start on this show. And the challenge is that I'm going to read out a verse from a poem here. And you need to guess who the poet is and what they're talking about.
This is the worst thing ever. Like, I do not know anything.
Don't worry. I think you know this.
Okay, let's go.
So the poem is, when I see them, every problem just seems to go away. When I see their faces, when I hear their voices, I seem to transport into a whole different world. When I see them, I smile automatically. So, who is this wonderful and deeply thoughtful and expressive poet, and what are they talking about?
Where did you find this is my question. I want to know that. Where did you find this?
This is in the greatest poems of the century. That's the book I found it from.
This sounds very familiar. It does sound like my poem for the Backstreet Boys.
That's the one. And ding, 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 ding.
Where the heck did you find that?
This is the greatest piece of literature. In fact, can I just add, I was about to give you one more clue just in case you didn't guess it, which was the ending of the poem, which went, all I can say right now is, thank you for giving me all you have to give, loving me more than that, and never breaking my heart. And for anyone who knows Backstreet Boys, that's wordplay at its finest, I must say.
Where is this? Is this online? Have I put this online? I need to get rid of this. Where did you find this?
Like I told you, it is like one of the greatest poems. So, what are you talking about, and what inspired you to write about this subject?
So, I wrote this about the Backstreet Boys, who I'm obsessed with. If you know me, I love the Backstreet Boys forever and ever and ever. And I don't know what inspired me to write it, to be very honest, but geez, I was sappy. Like, I was so sappy.
I'm with you on the Backstreet Boys love, because the first music device that I ever owned was the Sony Walkman that used to clip onto your jeans and used to think you were the coolest person in the world.
Yeah.
And the first cassette that I ever had was The Hits Chapter 1 by Backstreet Boys. And just...
Nice.
Yeah, just remembering that time is like... I'm not sure if you watched the movie This Is the End, which is this movie about an apocalypse, and like a lot of comedians end up dying because of the apocalypse. And the big question is, what does heaven look like? And for those comedians, heaven looks like the Backstreet Boys performing live 24/7. So they just go up and it's just Backstreet Boys over there performing everybody. So that's what I felt like when I had the first cassette. So I'm very happy to have someone on the show who actually loves Backstreet Boys, because you're the only person I can ask these questions, you know?
Yeah, I love that. If you were an NSYNC fan, this interview would immediately end. So just want to put that out there.
So
this is serious.
Just need to delete all the NSYNC questions now. But I have some
Please delete.
but I have some Backstreet Boys questions for you. So the first one is,
Okay.
what qualities about Backstreet Boys really stood out to you? And do you think they represented something bigger than a boy band?
Okay, so I'll tell you, this is terrible. Okay, so I think I'm older than you, if I'm not mistaken. I'm assuming here that I'm older than
Rich
you.
assumptions, but yeah, continue.
Rich assumptions. So I was probably in about 5th or 6th grade, I think, when they first came out. Yeah, probably around 6th grade when they first came out. So I used to listen to the radio, obviously, growing up, and I heard their song, and I think at the time it was Quit Playing Games with My Heart, if I'm not mistaken. And I would just hear it on the radio, and it was always playing, and I'd be like, oh, I like this song, like a little kid singing along. And then in the States, we have something called the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. So on Thanksgiving, which is in the 3rd Thursday of November, we have this massive parade in New York City where all these artists perform. And then they performed, and that was the first time I saw them and on TV, and I was like, oh, that's my favorite song that I'm always listening to, And like from that day onwards, like I was in love with Nick Carter and I was in love with the Backstreet Boys. And I don't know, I've always like been into their music and since a very, very young age, and I've just always loved their music. Like, what's not to love about peak Backstreet Boys music? Like, it's just so good. Like, you can't argue that point. So since that day onwards, like I've always been obsessed with them, had the posters, used to record all their interviews on VHS and like keep it so I can watch it again. And yeah, so I've always been obsessed with them.
This journey that started with the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and you've been with them ever since. How would you summarize the evolution of Backstreet Boys as each album came out? So from the first one, Backstreet's Boys, it was called Backstreet Boys, and then Backstreet's Back, to then Millennium, Black and Blue, and then the later albums, Never Gone and all the others. What emotions does each album evoke for you, and would you like to rank them?
Ooh, okay. First of all, the best album ever is Millennium. Let's not even play. Like, we all know Millennium is the best album. I want it that way. Like, it's just the best album. We all know this fact. Black and Blue was a good little transition into the 2000s, but we all know Millennium is the best, and then the Backstreet Boys album. I would say actually the OG Backstreet Boys and Millennium are like this, like this. I think for anyone, and I think this is true for any age group, the musician that you loved in your teenage years or your younger years, whether they're good or they're not, or whether they're still popular or not, they hold a nostalgia factor. It reminds you of your youth. It reminds you of your younger days. And I think that's the connection that you have. Like, if you ask someone, if you ask our parents who their favorites are, they'll say a Muhammad Rafi, or they'll say someone, but it's because it's connected to a time in their life of youth and, playing with your friends, your first, things like that. So I think for me, that's what the Backstreet Boys and just generally music from the 90s and 2000s is all about. It's that connection to your high school, junior high school, your college days. That's what I think music is.
Everyone's got a band or a certain phase from their childhood or the teenage years that I always look back fondly on. And Backstreet Boys was mine and yours, and I would not have it any other way.
Yeah.
Because I also going to
Totally.
say I want it that way, but okay, no more puns. All right, so I definitely want to talk about New York with you. I'm going to quote you. This is something you've said in the past. I'm going to quote you word for word. And you've said, "Fight me. New York City is the best city in the world. I'm going to cry." Unquote. So we are going to fight you on this. Why do you think New York City is the best city in the world? And why is it not Queen?
I don't know much about Queen, so I'm not going to hate on Queen. Why New York is the best city in the world? New York City is a hate it or love it city. There's no in between. You're either going to fall in love with it or you're going to absolutely hate every single part of New York City. And I'm okay with that. I fall in the love it category. Why? Number one, if you grew up in New York City, and I'm not talking the suburbs, I'm talking New York City. So one of the 5 boroughs, Queens, Brooklyn, Bronx, Staten Island, Manhattan, whatever it is, you are prepared to do anything in this world and live anywhere in this world. And there's no doubt about that. You grow up independent. You grow up with such a diverse community around you, whether your neighborhood is more towards one ethnicity or race or not. Your school is definitely filled with people from all over the world. The food, you get to experience authentic food from any country in the world. You name it, you will find an authentic food place from that country in New York City, guaranteed. Like, there's no doubt in my mind, you know? And that type of upbringing, you can't, I feel personally, I don't think I would have gotten anywhere else. It's a city that teaches you a lot outside of the four walls of your school, you know? I learned to be independent at a very young age, and I don't think that would be possible in a city elsewhere. You know, I always joke about this. I only learned how to ride a bicycle like a month ago because I never needed it. I didn't ever need a bicycle to get me anywhere. I either walked everywhere or I took the bus or the subway. You know, I didn't need it. So I think those types of teachings, that's what the city has given me, and I'll always be grateful for that. The knowledge, the diversity, the independence at a very, very, very young age. So that for me is, you know, New York City.
I read this quote about New York City which said that one instantly belongs to New York, but one only belongs to it as much as 5 minutes belong in 5 years. And it feels the same to me that no matter how much you know about the city, the history of it just swamps you. It's the quintessential metropolis. There's so much history, art, culture, food, or music that's either originated from New York or has been strongly influenced by it. And I had this feeling when I went to London, which was that every building, every bridge, every street has so much history or some story behind it. It's been through a lot.
Yeah.
And in contrast, Dubai,
Yeah.
you moved in 2008 and you've pretty much seen the city become what it's become. So when you moved in, I think right after that, the Burj Khalifa opened up, then the metro, then the marina, the JBR, downtown. All these areas have come
Yeah.
up right in front of you. So how do you
Yeah.
view this contrast? Do you feel like for Dubai, do you feel like a parent who's watching a kid grow right in front of their eyes? And for New York, have you ever felt that, I know your parents moved in 1978 and you've grown up in the same block your entire life. Do you ever get this feeling in New York that no matter how much you know about it, there's still a lot more to know and you'll always be a speck on this continuum of the city?
So I think with the difference between Dubai and New York is, and they're two very different cities, and they have my respect in very different ways. With Dubai, as you said, I moved there in 2008. The Dubai that I moved to is not the same Dubai that we live in now. And that's not a bad thing. That just goes to, that's a tip towards the leaders who can adapt so quickly and move towards a future. You know, there's no comparing to the way Dubai has just bloomed. You can't, I don't think there's any city in the world that has done what Dubai has done in the 11 years that I've been there, in the 12 years, I can't count, 12 years, 13 years now, actually, wow, that I've been there. No city changes like that. Like, it's mind-blowing. You go away for 3 weeks, you come back, Sheikh Zayed Road has a canal under it. Like, it's crazy, you know? But in New York, although you feel like you're a speck in the grand scheme of things because there's so many people, the one thing about New York is it'll be the same. When I come back, you know, some of the storefronts might change, some of the, you know, gentrifying may happen. But for me, New York, I know that my building will always look the same. My street is always going to look the same. You know, that's never going to change. So I think that's the contrast I feel in Dubai. Like, in Dubai, the road that you used to take to work may not even exist the way that you first envisioned it, you know? So it first wrote it. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's like my view on Dubai versus New York.
It does answer my question, and it also leads into my next question. So you mentioned about how fast time passes. You've said in the past that in Dubai you blink and a building pops up, and you don't even get the time to think how much time is passing in Dubai itself. It always feels like there's some magic or some sorcery in the air in Dubai itself that makes time just speed past every single day. So that begs the question, would you rather prefer having a great time, but then watching your 20s and your 30s just whiz past you and just look back an entire decade's past? Or would you prefer being in a place that it feels like, okay, time's, taking its own time, pun not intended, but it's going at its own pace and you are getting to live every moment? What would you prefer?
No, I'm a fast-paced girl, man. Like I need to. I'm this, and I think that's because of where I grew up. This, New York is a very, very fast-paced city. Although the structure may not change, everyone is go, 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 go. So when I first got to Dubai, Dubai was not go, 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 go. It was go, go, And I wasn't very used to that. Now I feel like Dubai is very like, let's go. We need to do this. Let's go, So I that's me personally. Maybe if you ask me 10, 15 years from now, my view may change. Who knows? But, right now I love having a fast-paced situation.
Do you think you're destined to return to New York City? Because you've said in the past that now you don't like planning anymore, ever since the pandemic as well. It's shown everyone the futility of making
Yeah.
plans, and no one can tell. But do you have this
Yeah.
inner feeling inside you that there's another chapter in New York City for you?
Yeah, I think everyone should feel that way, right? Like we're so young, you can't call it now. Like I feel like there's so much to do. There's so much to happen. I don't know what's written. I have no idea, As exactly what you said, I was such a planner. Like I had everything planned out, mapped out. And if there's one thing that the pandemic has taught us is you can plan all you want, but that doesn't mean it's going to go to plan, So you can sit there and write it out and do an Excel sheet and make a calendar, but you don't know what's going to happen. So I think there are chapters left in my career, in my life, whatever it may be. Where it leads me, I have no idea.
Right. Okay, so I have one more question on the two cities, and I expected this to be the hardest question, but you never know.
Yeah.
So, which
Okay.
city has better food? And if I can squeeze in a second question, if I was going to visit Queens, New York, what's the one place that I have to eat at?
Okay. New York has better food. That's because it's my home. It's my home though. Like if I ask you, does your home have better food or this other city that you moved to? You're going to say your home because it's the emotional connection, right? Like there's nothing that can separate that emotional connection, whether it's good or not. Like sometimes I take my husband Jeff and I'll take him to one of the places that I loved here, my childhood places, and he goes, "It's not that great." And I'm like, "Don't you dare." Like it's an emotional connection. So you can't beat that, number one. And can I give you two places that you have to go in Queens?
Yes, please.
Okay. The first place you have to go in Queens, no, I'm going to give you three. No, two. The first place you have to go is get Singa's Pizza. It is an institution. It's a Queens thing. It's not a New York thing. It's a Queens thing. So if you're from Queens, famous Singa's Pizza. You got an onion and green pepper pizza. That's what you have to do. And you have to have a bagel. And the one bagel that's near my house is, wait, you're going to see my dad. That's my dad
Hi.
passing through.
Hi.
And you have to go to this bagel store that's right around the corner from my place. Funny thing is, no idea what the name of this bagel store is, but I've been going there since I was very little. But it's the bagel store. So you have to go there.
Everyone just check out the bagel store that's next to Priti's house.
Yeah. Yes. That's the one. There's only one. That's the one.
So let's talk about radio. How do you think your life would have been different if you hadn't gone to Times Square that day and seen Hillary Burton on Total Request Live? Do you think you would have still been in radio, or do you think it was inevitable that you would have been in radio, or that one event was a major milestone and created this ripple effect to create where you are?
If that didn't happen, I would have been a lawyer.
Do you always sit and think about that moment that, oh, it was it's such a chance moment and look where you've ended up because of it?
Yeah. I actually found the photo of that moment. I will send it to you so you can put it up. It's somewhere here on the screen. I'll send it to you. That moment changed everything. Everything. Like, It changed it all for me. There's no doubt about that. That is a clear cut. Everyone has like a moment in their life where they know that their path changed or something changed in their life. That is my defining moment.
Fascinating. So I had Brent on the show earlier this year, and we were talking about radio as an art form. And what he had said was, just like acting, radio, a lot of people don't know this, that radio requires a lot of practice, skill, and effort. And it's not what people think it is, about just going up to a mic and just speaking as you would normally, or just talking to a bunch of friends. So is that how you view it as well? Is it every time you're on the breakfast show, do you think you're creating art?
150,000%. I worked really hard to learn the craft of radio and television. When I did my major as a broadcast journalism major, I learned. It's not like because I had a decent voice or I could speak and string a sentence together, I was in radio. So at Hofstra, which is the university that I attended, they had a radio station, but it wasn't just a college for the college campus. It was actually, we broadcast in the town. So it was a proper radio station. It was a community radio station, that had a program director, a chain of command, separate from the university, but employed only university students on air. It was like that. And I had to take classes and take an exam in order to even be considered in joining the radio station. So I had to really work hard and learn, how do you operate a board, the technicalities of radio. It's not just you push a button and the mic is on. There's a lot of technicality that goes into it. Knowing your audience, knowing how to say what you're trying to say, the art of expressing yourself in 30 seconds between two songs and making it interesting enough. That's an art form, Why are storytellers? I think, you know what? That's the word. Radio presenters are storytellers at the end of the day. We are telling you a story. That story could be the traffic, the weather, something interesting about a celebrity, or something about your life. But we are in the art of presenting you information in an interesting, unique way.
So what's the feeling like when the door closes in the morning and you're sitting on that three-way table? You've got Kris Fade on one end, you've got Big Rossi on the other end. Do you ever get this feeling that what you're doing in that moment is something really special? I'm not sure how the Beatles felt when they were recording their music, but do you ever get this feeling that what you're doing is something that people might look back on, remember very fondly, that you guys were the pioneers of something massive? Like, you don't know how big the impact might be, but in that moment, you just get that feeling that what we're doing right now is something that's going to be legendary.
I think, you know what, on a day-to-day basis, it's sometimes hard to understand the scope of what you're doing because we don't get to see our audience. It's just the three of us in the room talking to each other. But there are definitely moments when we may be talking to a listener and they're telling us their story, or we've done an interview with someone absolutely amazing. And in that conversation, we kind of look at each other like, we have a term in radio. It's like, this is gold. That's the term that we use for when something is extraordinary, or we know this is like a moment. So there are definitely times that we look at each other and we go, this is gold. Like, you go home that day knowing that you have either impacted someone, have told a story that deserved to be told, not your own, but like someone's, like whether it's a listener, an interview, whatever it is, or you go home knowing that what you did, whether even if it's comedy, that what you created in that room today was gold. It was magic. Like, we do get that feeling sometimes.
That seems to be a very powerful feeling. You've spoken in the past as well that no matter how tired you are in the morning, you do an early breakfast show, so you wake up quite early in the morning, and the moment the mic switch on, you say it's, in a way, it's a kind of a high and it rejuvenates you. Is there a way to actually put that feeling into words? Like, is it a kind of a high? Is it a, like, do you get into a flow state of sorts when the door closes and it's just you three talking?
Just like any other job, when the clock starts, right? But for us, Baba, for us, it's like when the mic is on, you are on. You have a responsibility. Imagine I'm reading the news at 6 o'clock in the morning and I sound like this. Hey, it's Priti from the Air News Center. Are you kidding me? I can't do that. You know, I have a responsibility at the end of the day to present information and to be on this show. Like, and you can't be that way. I will say though, if we're having somewhat of a bad day, we will call each other out on it on air. You know, like we are very real in the sense that we will call each other out. But in the process of the show, your mood changes, you know? So, yeah.
When you met Ranveer Singh, he just went down on his knees, kissed your hand, and he said, "Oh, I love what you're wearing." And you described that moment as a moment that it was such a surreal moment. Who would have
Yeah.
thought, right? So, what's been one memory apart from that one, where you've had this real surreal moment where you're sitting next to someone you've looked up to for a long time in your life, and you just thought, "Where have I come so far in life?" And I can't believe this is happening.
Oh gosh, there's so many. There's so many. Will Smith, for one, legend, right? A.R. Rahman, legend, like legend. Akshay Kumar, legend. Diljit Dosanjh, legend. You know, Ed Sheeran. Like you just think of these people, these mega artists that you watch and you're like, wow, Priyanka Chopra, I know that's a very divisive and controversial name, but I've met her several times. And man, that woman is phenomenal. She's pretty amazing, you know? I've interviewed her a few times and she's fantastic. They've been, you know, what we find is the A-list celebrities tend to be the ones that are pretty phenomenal and amazing. You look at Sir Richard Branson. We've had the pleasure of meeting him so many times. What a mind. What a guy, you know? And you're getting to pick the brain of the man who's created this legacy, you know? So there's definitely so many, I could go on and on, but you get the drift. Like these big names that you've always wondered about. And you're just like, wow, these people are amazing.
Unfortunately or fortunately, both Kris Fade and Big Rossi love to play a lot of pranks on you. And most of the pranks involve some kind of animal. So what's the worst prank they've pulled on you?
Oh, the rat. Have you seen the rat? Oh
But it
my
was not an
God.
actual rat, right? It was someone in a rat.
Yes. Oh my God. I hate them so much, but love them just the same. So they know I hate animals. And so, okay, I unfortunately have the reaction of when I'm angry or if I'm anxious, I cry. Not because like I'm upset, but that's my reaction. And they love playing on that. So they knew I would absolutely freak out. But they didn't expect me to freak out to the level where I would just start crying. And that's when they realized that they went too far with this prank. And then someone walked in wearing the rat costume and I started laughing hysterically. Like it was just so funny. I think it's on YouTube if you look it up. Like it was one of the most memorable pranks they pulled off, that's for sure.
It's one of the running gags, I think, at Virgin Radio. I think Brent always gives Kris Fade on his birthday some kind of animal. I think he brought a goat to the studios once, right?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So your mom has majored in music and tabla, I believe, and your grandfather was a singer.
A sitar,
and you yourself are an incredible dancer. Yes, sitar. And you yourself are an incredible dancer. So do you think there's any overlap or are there any links between radio and dance and music? Do you think a good radio segment is quite similar to a well choreographed dance performance where you have to match your fellow presenter beat for beat, or you need to pull out new moves to keep the people engaged?
No, for sure. Okay. So the great thing about a radio group, so let's say like it's the three of us together, right? Kris, Rossi, and I. We have to have a synchronicity. So with my eyes closed, I know when Kris is going to stop talking and I need to continue. I know. I also know exactly what he's thinking and what he's going to say and where the conversation is going to go, and vice versa. That is so important in a co-host situation. If you don't know what your co-host is about to say or do, it's going to fail. It's going to sound like you don't know what you're doing. So there's a certain, when we talk about radio as an art form, that is an art. Really knowing your co-host and where the conversation is going to go to create that magic on air. It's the same thing with a dance piece, whether you're doing a solo or you're doing it with a partner or a group. If one piece of the puzzle has kind of fallen out, if you've forgotten a step or it doesn't go with the beat, so you're off the beat, the whole thing falls apart, you know? So they're very similar in that sense.
Very interesting. I don't think this link between radio and dance has been explored in the past. You do dance workshops now, so I think there's a new business opportunity for you to maybe create a fusion of radio and dance.
Imagine.
I'll definitely sign up for that. So let's move on to our final few questions. What are some books, movies, or people that are very strongly influenced in your life?
Some books, movies, anything Bollywood. Like, I'm obsessed with Bollywood movies. So if you ask me, like you asked me about an English movie before, I have no idea. But if you ask me about like Hindi movies, then I know. Like, I really have not watched, honestly, like most English movies I've not seen. I just haven't. So, but like the Godfather series, I think I just saw for the first time like 2 years ago. Like, I really have not watched anything. So for me, Bollywood is a big, big influence. And I think that just has to do with upbringing, you know? As far as books goes, there's one book that I absolutely love. It's called The Perks of Being a Wallflower. It was turned into a movie not too long ago with Emma Watson. The movie's not that, it was okay. That book is it's a very sad book. But I think that was, you know, when you're in school and you're forced to read, it's sometimes hard to make a connection with a book if you're not already an avid reader. But that was kind of like the first book that I really felt a connection to, but not in the way that I related to the story. That's not the case at all. It was more so, it was the first time I felt like a book moved me. Like it brought out an emotion. Like, I really felt the words lift off the page. So that's one book. And it's a very like non-commercial book. It's a very niche book, but it was the first, I just vividly remember. I still have my copy, my original copy from when I was a teen. And I keep it with me because it was like the first book I really felt like the words were moving, you know?
What are some people that have been role models for you in your life?
Oprah, because isn't she everyone's role model? Right? Oprah is amazing. Also, my dad, who's sitting over here on the couch next to me, my dad is like my superhero. Like, I look up to him the most out of everyone.
So the year is 2030, and you've got your own talk show, just like Oprah, which has been your dream for a long time. And your guest is Shah Rukh Khan, and you can only ask him one question.
Sorry, who's my guest?
What question would you ask?
Who's my guest?
Your guest is Shah Rukh Khan.
What would I ask Shah Rukh Khan? What would I ask Shah Rukh Khan? He's an interesting guy, you know, before I answer this. He's very interesting because he's the first. Did you see his Letterman interview?
Yes, on Netflix.
Okay. He is the first actor who is not ashamed of saying he loves fame. He is the only actor who is very open and honest about the fact that he loves the attention. He loves when people come up to him and say they love him. Like, I feel he's the only, everyone else is like, oh, I'm so humbled. Oh, he's the only one who's like, dude, I love this. I'm a rock star. The one question I would ask him, I think, is why he never pushed to cross over to any other mediums or movie industries like a Hollywood. if it was a conscious decision, if it was never really brought to him, or why. Because he really is a global icon. So I've always kind of wondered why he never really pushed to try to make his way into Hollywood, you know? Because we've seen people here and there. I mean, Amitabh Bachchan was in The Great Gatsby and whatnot. So I always wondered that. So that's the question I would ask him.
Did you get an opportunity to meet him at Virgin Radio?
I've stalked him a few times and I missed him. There was one time he came to our radio station. He came for an interview at City. And I got the time mixed up. So I got ready and I came over because I want to meet Shah Rukh Khan. And then I missed it. So it didn't happen. One day.
But that's something interesting you brought up. This is not a question I had, but now that you mentioned it, I would love to get your thoughts on it. How do you view fame? You are someone who's quite famous in Dubai and UAE. You're very well known. A lot of love pours out for you all the time. On Instagram, you are part influencer and part dancer right now at the moment. And you are someone who has seen fame. So how do you view it? So you said Shah Rukh Khan loves it. Do you love it as well?
Yo, honestly, this is my New York coming out. Yo, honestly, I don't think I'm famous. Is that weird? I don't think so. I just love what I do, and I truly am grateful. And honestly, I'm very humbled that people appreciate it. When someone says something nice, it's still, I'm just like, wait, me? I still do one of these. Are you talking to me? Because I just like to do what I love. That's all. And if that translates or impacts someone in a positive manner, that's truly amazing. For me, my whole life's mission and my social media and whatever I do, it's all about positivity. It's just giving someone a little escape and putting a smile on someone's face for, even if it's the length of a 30-second reel that I put up, you know? So I don't know. I just don't see that because I'm just me and I'm just doing what I love. So I don't really see it that way. If that makes, I don't know if that's avoiding the answer, but that's truly how I feel. I just don't see it as I'm famous. I don't see it that way at all. I just see it as I do what I love and I'm grateful that it's appreciated.
But do you think the concept of fame, like Shah Rukh Khan or win opera, whenever they walk out on the streets, people are screaming, is that concept attracted to you at all? Or is that something you would rather avoid? You prefer the space you've created for yourself in life?
I don't know. I mean, it's we have a bit of both. I love it when I'm in a mall, in Dubai Mall or Mall of the Emirates, and someone comes up to me and says, hey, I listened to you on the radio. I love that. Not because someone recognized me, but because I get to meet the listeners, you know? I get to meet who listens to our show. I love knowing who's turning on the radio, you know? Where you're from, what's your story? Where do you live? Are you married? Do you have kids? I love hearing that because, as I said, when we're doing radio, we don't get to see who's listening to us. So we don't know who sometimes, who our audience is. So when someone comes up to me and says, hey, how are you? I listen to your show all the time. And I love that because, not because I'm getting the recognition, but because I get to know who's on the other side of that microphone.
Interesting. This ties in perfectly into my last two questions for you. So the second last question is, what would you like your legacy to be like?
My legacy, I just want it to be happiness and positivity. That's all I want. It's positivity, happiness, and kindness. Those are the only three things that I would want associated with me. If someone looks at me and they say, if they've learned to be kinder because of what I'm doing, if they've learned to be happier because of what I'm doing, if they've learned to have a more positive outlook on life because of what I'm doing, I'm satisfied. I'm happy. That's all that I want. Because I think the world could use a little bit more of that, you know?
I must say you're definitely on that path because as someone who used to hate waking up early for work, you guys were my friends and the ones who used to make me laugh and used to play these pranks and games. Used to pick on Rossi all the time in the morning, and that was something I always enjoyed. And it was like me and my friends hanging out in the car itself, and it was something I always look forward to. It made the mornings a lot more bearable, made waking up early also a lot more bearable. So I must say you are definitely You're definitely carving an excellent legacy for yourself. All right, final question.
Thank
What
you.
do you think is the meaning of life?
What is the meaning of life? The meaning of life is what life means to you. Whether it's, for me, I feel like the meaning of life is different for everyone. There are no two people that are the same. For me, the meaning of life is your family, your happiness, your health, doing what you love, your passions. For someone else, it could be completely different. It could be money. It could be being the CEO of a company. It could be whatever it is. So I think the meaning of life is whatever life means to you. What motivates you to wake up every morning and get your day started? That is the meaning of life,
Beautifully put, Preeti. Thank you so much. If people want to find you, connect with you online, in person, where can they do so?
You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok and all those places. I'm Priti Malik.
Sounds great. Preeti, thank you so much. It was an honor talking to you.
It was so fun talking to you. You're fantastic. Thank you for having me.